Welcome, everyone. I'm Maggie Abdullah with Mercado Hospitality, Director of Sales, and we have with us today Rouhet Oosthuizen with Africa Our Own, founder and CEO. We're very lucky to have her because it's obviously gotten very busy in Africa with everybody, pent-up demand, as what we would say. But we wanted to start with that video because just to give you a sense of place and also give you kind of a sense of what we're going to be discussing today. Rue graciously lended her time and expertise a little earlier this year to discuss kind of the difference between the crossing and a migration, kind of in a big level. And now we're going to talk about kind of the tangibles, as Rue likes to say, which conservatory, which itinerary, and which camps she would recommend based on what your travelers are looking to do. We're going to try and keep it about 30-45 minutes because beyond that, it's just too much information. Some housekeeping items before I turn it over to Rue herself is we obviously can't see you when you're on mute, but feel free to put questions in the chat or the Q&A and we'll try and answer them as we go. If you have larger, more in-depth questions, I'm going to send you all of Rue's information along with a PDF version of this presentation. So don't feel like you have to scribble everything down. And also the recording, so you can go back and look at it on demand and share with colleagues. Rue is a wonderful resource and with knowledge and expertise in on the continent, and she has so much to share with you, and she's so approachable. I think under her signature, it actually has her WhatsApp cell phone number. So with all that said, Rue, I want to turn it over to you. Welcome. Thank you for calling in. What time is it there in South Africa?
No, it's still lovely 7 o'clock in the evening.
Okay, so not too late, yes. But so as I kind of referred to, you guys have you've gotten very busy. So would you say 2023 is already booked up, or?
For East Africa, specifically pertaining to what we're discussing, there are slight availability. However, I'm advising a lot of travel advisors and clients to wait for 2024. This is the one thing you don't take second best.
Mm-hmm.
It's a once in a lifetime experience, not to come to Africa, but to do East Africa, specifically the migration part. And so I would not encourage anyone to rush into just doing it for the sake of doing it. A lot of planning and especially ahead, you know, the time ahead is necessary. So yes. 2024 is.
Hold on one second. Something's going off. Sorry. Oh, okay. Sorry. My apologies for that.
That's okay. Yeah. So I urge people that we learn about this. We have time. We've got the rest of this year, and I'm speaking specifically about the peak season in Kenya, which is June to October. So during this presentation, we are going to touch on something different because there are people that are keen to travel in the low season and with no crowds. So we will look at both aspects, and that is much easier. And 2023 is still fine to plan.
Okay, well, I'm going to pull up the presentation. I'm just going to turn my camera off real quick and we'll get that up for you so we can start. Everybody can see everything?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's lovely to join you. Hope it's all going well. I guess it's fall now and the kids have gone back to school and summer's over. We are in the spring here in Southern Africa, Cape Town. You can see I've got a jacket on. It's still cool, but really beautiful days. Today we're talking about East Africa, and specifically to help you understand why we book certain camps in certain areas and why. Why do we do it? When do we do it? And where do we do it? So The presentation is basically the ABC. It's itineraries, when and where. That's what we're going to discuss. That is that typical crazy scene that people are referring to as the migration. As we talked about this in our previous discussion, the migration is not the crossing. And it's really important when you speak to a client to make them aware of this, because this phenomenon that takes place in nature is something that we cannot guarantee. So for me, the most important thing to take away from this conversation tonight is to let your client know that we do everything in our power to put them in the right camps at the right time to have a possible experience of a crossing. But as experienced travel advisors know, we can't guarantee anything when it comes to wildlife. As much as you send someone to the very famous Sabi-San Game Reserve in South Africa, where the big five is obviously pretty sure to be seen, we don't want to put our foot in our mouths. So please, when we talk about this and when we explain it to guests, to clients, please make sure that we have that little exemption where we say, this is what we aim for you to experience. However, nature is in control and we can't control nature. It's a huge paradox, because it's all about timing and we can't predict the time, because the rain is really the driving force that encourages these animals to move. And this is the circular movement that we were talking about in our last chat and showing the maps. The map that's currently showing is the Kenya map. And if you look at the Masai Mara, it's to the left. That is where the migration is taking place. And if you see there's a border, that border is actually the border with Tanzania. So that's Serengeti south and then the Masai Mara north. And it's just that area where this wildlife spectacle takes place in a continuum throughout the year. And it depends where you go, at what time of the year, where you stay, what you're going to see. There you can see how big Tanzania is, and actually the small part that Serengeti plays in the whole thing. So I know that it's extraordinary when a client phones and you that's selling the world have to say, go to Africa, and that you then choose Africa, but then you have to choose whether you go to East Africa or Southern Africa. Do you go to Tanzania? Do you go to Kenya? It's a huge discussion that I imagine takes place with your client. So we're very happy to help you and to jump in with a call. If you need me to just assist in trying to explain it to a client better, we're always happy to do that. We're happy to set up in our calendars when it's available for everyone and to make it easier to understand. This map, you can see, it's extremely useful map to understand the movement of the 2 million animals that are continuously following the rains. And what that means is that it rains ahead of time, then the grass is growing really long, and there's amazing grazing for them to have food. And that is really the survival, and that's why they're there. It's to eat and to reproduce. So that is the cycle and the circle of their lives. Now, when you look at this map, you can see that August, September, it's showing the Mara River crossing. And that is what everybody see on these documentaries that we see on National Geographic or Discovery Channel. And it's specifically called The Crossing. And there's also a crossing in the Grumeti River crossing, which you can see below is June, July. So that's a different, that is the same, it's the same herds, the same masses of animals, because they're now up in that area, the western corridor of the Serengeti, before they're going up north. So you can have different experiences. You can have a safari when you're coming to Tanzania and you're staying in the western corridor in the Grumeti, that is in the Serengeti, and that would be June to July. Or you go up north and you do August, July, August. For me personally is when I book the Kenyan sector. September, the animals have crossed mostly, and they are grazing now in the Mara, and they stay. You'll see the movement goes clockwise when in October they start moving out back into Tanzania, and then November, December, central, and by the time they get to the south in February, that's the calving season. So that for me personally is probably more intense and far more authentic than the craziness of the July, August rush. Just because personally, I am the turning left when everyone else is turning right. I do prefer the low season. I do prefer fewer crowds. And that brings me to another point. You have to explain to clients that the July, August, September experience in the Mara has got a downside, and that is that there are crowds. So it's important that we use the right lodges, camps, so that we know that our guests are taken care of and they're not going to sit at a river crossing with literally 50 other vehicles, because I would be extremely disappointed if I came all this way and I'd be out there trying to disconnect from the world and connect with nature, and all I have just cars and people around me. So personally, I find that the February calving season in southern Serengeti is probably one of the most overlooked experiences. So if you have a client that they don't like crowds, they don't like busy, crazy times, that's a really good option to give them. The June, July, August option in the Grumeti, very expensive, but very good as well, more exclusive. And then the real crazy July, August, September in the Mara, which is what everyone is after.
How many calves, I think you've shared this kind of not this number, but how many calves are typically born during calving season?
Oh my goodness, Maggie, there's hundreds of thousands.
Mm-hmm.
It's the wildebeest, the zebra, and it's another, the gazelle, the
Mm-hmm.
Thompson's gazelle. So between them, it's hundreds of thousands
Mm-hmm.
of calves that are born. And you can imagine it's like a frenzy for the wildlife, for the cats, for the predators,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like a free for all. It sounds terribly cruel.
So probably not recommended for small children.
No, no, I would say that that is a good point to bring up. Generally speaking, about children on these safaris, I would honestly not bring kids before they turn about 15 or 16.
Okay, good advice.
Yeah, it's such an expensive trip, and it takes a lot of effort and work to go out on a safari, especially if you're staying in the Masai Mara and you're going out at 6 o'clock in the morning to get to a place where they feel the rangers are kind of, certain they've been watching the wildlife movement and the behavior of the animals, and they think it's where a crossing is going to take place. And you could sit there for 8 hours. And I just feel that kids, they're just too young before that age. It's not fair on them, to put them in a vehicle and tell them to sit. I just think I would, not be very happy if my
No, that's why I bring up the point, because
they had to bribe my brother and I in the cart and gave us money for all the sightings we saw when we were children, because you just can't concentrate.
It's a long time to be patient and wait.
Exactly. It's not Disney. It's not a show. It's not a zoo. It's not entertainment. It is all of that, but it's real. And you have to have the patience and the passion and the will and the absolute determination to disconnect from phones, from emails, and really immerse yourself into nature, because it's when you get still and you surround yourself with true nature, that's when the spectacle or the entertainment will happen. And I think that's what we've all kind of lost. We can't do that any longer because we're just not patient enough. And this is one of the great lessons that Africa teaches us, is that everything takes time. It's famous African time. That is true, because there is a time for everything, and these animals, they don't care who's sitting in the car watching them. They'll cross that river or they won't. And this is the great thing about going. So for me, when I plan a trip for guests and they say to me, it's my dream to see the crossing, I'll be like, right, I'll try my very best to make that dream come true. I will start them off in the Maasai the Maasai Reserve, which has beautiful camps. Oh, maybe let me go to the slide. Sorry.
Right. No, I was thinking that this would actually tie into what you're about to do.
The next one, I'll do the camps that I've selected. So how long should we go for? 2 weeks. When do we go? Go, if you want to see the crossing, you have to go to Kenya from July, I would say July and August. If you want to see the carving in southern Serengeti, February. If you want to go to the Grumeti, go June, July. If you want to do a mobile camp with Singita or a camp that's on the Mara River, then you usually go between June and July. So it all depends what you want to see, which is the third, what will I see? So that covers when you will go. Will there be crowds? Yes, there will be crowds, especially in Kenya when they do the river crossing. However, I have my own special itinerary and my plan that I do to ensure that people are taken care of and kind of exclusive as much as possible, which I'll get to on the next slide. How long should I plan it in advance? A year. And is it expensive? It is. It's definitely, without a doubt, it will be one of the most expensive trips because you're paying for not only the experience of what you're seeing, but a lot of these camps have this wonderful philosophy, what they embrace. They call it the 4 C's. It stands for conservation, for community, for culture and for commerce. So basically what these camps and lodges do throughout Africa is to ensure that everything gets plowed back into the community. So I know that sustainability is the new buzzword, and we've been doing it all our lives in Africa. And all these places exist because the philosophy behind all of it is sustainability. So if you want to give back and you want to make a difference, you can be rest assured that those dollars that you pay for safari contributes directly to these 4 C's. It contributes to commerce, which helps the communities. It contributes to the communities because they're the ones working at the lodges. It contributes to culture because you're learning about culture that is completely different to you, and you contribute to conservation. So in Kenya, I've just put down some camp names for you just so that you can have a bit of a idea. But really, my secret weapon and what I do is I start off in Nairobi, and there's a flight from New York that arrives in Nairobi on Kenyan Airways, or there are flights via Dubai on Emirates. I think Qatar also flies in, KLM, Air France, British Airways. Just there's quite a lot of access into the country. And I'll let people overnight in Nairobi and then go through to the Mara. Personally, I feel that there's 2 camps that I would choose to combine as 2 stays in the Mara. The first camp is called Sala's Camp, and that camp is on the confluence of 2 rivers, the Sant and the Kikarok River. And that's where the migration actually starts. That's where the wildebeest actually starts to cross, because they come into the Mara, and then they will cross from the Sant River, they'll cross in, and then eventually they have to cross the Mara River, where you see the crocodiles. The Sant River, where Sala's camp is, there's no crocodiles there, but you can see these masses of herds. And the great thing about this specific camp is that it gives you access to, you can go at 6 o'clock in the morning and you can get to a river crossing and sit there and wait. The crossings generally and with statistics historically takes place in the mornings very early. So that is why you would choose a camp like that has got close access and that can get you there ASAP. If you book certain camps and conservancies, it means that you have to drive for a few hours to get to the Mara, and then you can only access it from 6 o'clock in the morning, and then you still have to drive another few hours. So that's one of the reasons it's important to know where to book and where to position the clients. And then on top of that experience, I usually move guests. Sala's camp is on the southeastern part of the Maasai National Park. So then I move them to the west into the Mara Triangle. And a lot of people have heard of Angama Mara. It's where the famous movie Out of Africa was shot. It is views that you cannot imagine. And it's just one of those places that you have to experience in your life. So I would do 4 nights at Sala, 4 nights at Angama. And then if people, and I encourage people to see a small and a different part of Kenya, usually take them up to Laikipia or Samburu and let them stay there for 3 nights and then go back to Nairobi. The flights out of Nairobi usually departs late at night, so there's no need for another overnight in Nairobi.
Right. Well, and I would like to jump in and just, if you want sample itineraries to kind of, start, Rue has those that, we can kind of put together quickly so you can kind of get an idea day by day.
Yes, and just to remember that July, August, September is winter. So, and this is the kind of information we'll always give you in advance, but it's not cold, but it's cool. So puffer jacket. It's not summer. And then Tanzania, I really think that the Singita Faru Faru, which is in the Grumeti, is something quite extraordinary to see and to stay at. And then the Singita Explorers Camp, that's like something quite unique because you can have friends and use it as an exclusive use camp, which is a little bit less luxurious, still extremely luxurious, and not glamping. It's far above glamping status. It has the Singita brand on it, but it's literally, they set up these camps and you're in the middle of it. So you'll hear animals the whole night. And it's really interesting to experience that. So for the more adventurous at heart, I would say Singita Explorers is something that is really amazing to experience. Yeah, so Tanzania has the advantage that it has a much larger territory. And so the months that we discussed, where the months December, January, February, March, April and May, I usually avoid because that's when the long rains take place. And then start again June, July in Tanzania. So you have a lot of window, a lot of time to plan your trip in Tanzania. And so that is less of a pressure to get that thing sorted out. And of course, it can be extremely expensive if you choose brands like Singita, but there are many other options, so you don't have to break the bank. And if you travel in February, then you're at low season, and that's even less expensive. So that's something to keep in mind for someone that has a dream to go, but they can't afford an $80,000 safari. Don't have to break the bank.
That's good advice.
Yeah, and so the most important thing is the rain. The rain is what drives this whole thing. And a lot of people ask if the climate change influences this part of the world. Yes, it does. We had an interesting season in August where it was raining unusually in the Mara. It's supposed to be dry. It's not rain like what you would experience in the Northern Hemisphere. It's not rain like you would experience in New York or in Maine or on the East Coast, where it's these days of, gray sky and it continuously drizzle and rain. It's more like thunder and a massive storm, and then it's over and done with. So it's actually quite dramatic. If you see rain during this time, it's unusual, and you should embrace that as a surprise that nature has given you. Generally speaking, it doesn't rain during the peak season in Kenya because it had rained already in May, in April and May. That's why the grass is already long and why there is grass for the animals to feed on. So if you can think of it in your head like that, wherever the animals are at the time, the rain had already fallen there. And when they've eaten all the grass, they continue on and they move on where the rain had fallen and the grass has grown grass grew, and it's now ready for them to graze on. So if that makes sense, or to help you to remember how the cycle works. The migration, remember, the migration is the constant flow of the animals moving. And when we talk, when clients ask you, I want to see the migration, we have to ask them, do you mean the crossing? Because the migration is a year-round cycle. Visas, easy, online for Kenya, Tanzania. Yellow fever, not for Kenya, but if you go to Tanzania and you go into Kenya, yes. And then COVID at the moment, if you are vaccinated, it's fine. And it's changing, as all of you know, constantly. So that's something that we deal with when we're actually dealing with a booking. But that's just the general sense of what's going on at the moment. Yeah, please ask questions if anyone's got questions, and you can contact us on our info@africarome.com or rouhet@africarome.com.
And I will send all that information with my follow-up to everyone. So don't worry that you have to write it down or, have a typo. I'll make sure it's all accurate. As you can see, Ru is very, very knowledgeable, and Africa can be overwhelming, especially when you have clients that are not sure quite what they want to do. And Ru, you can do all kinds of different itineraries in addition to just the migration and crossing, but that's kind of the big bucket list.
Yes, but as an example, right at the moment, I have guests that are traveling. They've decided to do a combination of Kenya and South Africa. So they spent time in Kenya in September, start of September, and then they came down to us here in the South, and they're now combining the Cape and Safari in South Africa. So we can do anything.
Well, and she's also started working with the Crown and Champa resorts in the Maldives. I think she has a honeymooner they're doing the safari and then going on to relax in the Maldives. So Ru is very creative, as I always like to highlight that she does mention she goes left when everybody goes right. And if, as seasoned travelers, we all know that's the way to go, because you get to see some of the things that not everybody else is going to do.
Correct.
Are there any questions? No questions so far, Ru. You've been it was very thorough. So I know if you have questions later on, Ru is very helpful and responsive. So please reach out to her if you want some sample itineraries to kind of, maybe get the wheels turning with clients and give them an idea kind of what to expect.
Yes, and if you want us to jump in and assist you with a sales call, happy to do that. We just need to plan it in advance.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Ru, I think I already mentioned this, but she is happy to. It is a complicated. These itineraries can be complicated, so it would be Ru is your partner to help you talk through everything so that they know where all the money is going, where it's going. What day of the week they're going to be where. So I think that is always great to stress, is that Ru is your partner in South Africa, or the entire continent, not just South Africa. Well, if we don't have any questions, Ru, is there anything else you want to?
No, I'm happy to share the knowledge, and please don't hesitate if you've got someone that's interested in East Africa. If the question comes up, do I do South Africa or East Africa? Which one do I do? My answer is you always do South Africa first, and then you do East Africa.
Oh, that's good.
And then you come back.
That's a good fun fact.
Yeah.
Well, and as you have told me on numerous occasions, people think that Africa is going to be their bucket list, but they always want to come back. Always. They get the bug.
Too much to see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Ru. I appreciate it. I know you have guests in country already this week, so we appreciate you taking a second out of your evening to kind of share. We do have a question that popped up, so I'm just going to double check. Can you explain more about why South Africa first? Oh, you piqued a question.
Right. Well, it is because it's just logistically probably a little less. I don't want to say third world Kenya, because it certainly, I think it's really civilized to be in nature.
Mhm.
I think it's just it's less of a culture shock, and it's with direct flights now that we have from Atlanta and that we have from Newark. Cape Town is a really good beginning point, starting point to an itinerary. I always start with that because it gives people the ability to relax, to get over jet lag, to settle in, and to get used to the new environment. And then you continue on and you do a safari. The reason why I think you should do East Africa after South Africa is because the way the wildlife experience is very different to South Africa. It's in Botswana, in South Africa, in Zambia and Zimbabwe. It is more intense because the numbers are not as vast as you would have it in East Africa. So we don't have a 2 million animal migration here in South Africa. And I think you kind of build yourself up to that experience. And I'm concerned that if you experience that first, that you might be disappointed when you come to South Africa later and you only see 3 wildebeest, for example.
Mhm.
Don't misunderstand. The quality of game viewing in South Africa, in Southern Africa, is really phenomenal. It's far less crowded.
Mhm.
It's more exclusive, far fewer people, because the private game reserves are extremely strict with the number of vehicles that are allowed on a sighting. You only allow 2 vehicles. So that means a maximum of 12 people. Whereas in East Africa, you can go and look at images. There could be literally 50 vehicles at a sighting.
Wow.
So there's a lot of nuances that makes it different. And I just think, in my experience, I encourage people to come to South Africa first, go to East Africa, and they'll come back to Southern Africa again.
Good. Very good advice. Well, thank you everyone for your time. Ru, thank you as always. And be on the lookout for my follow-up probably tomorrow. Sometimes the recording takes a second to kind of generate on the cloud. But everyone, thank you so very much. And if we've missed your question, I will catch it and try and answer it offline at a later time. But thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon. And thanks for joining us for our masterclass. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Ru.
Bye.
Bye.